Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
I bought into this neighborhood because it looked perfect. Smooth sidewalks, manicured lawns, and glossy brochures showing kids riding bikes around a sparkling pool. They called it a resort-style community. Pickleball courts, fitness center, splash pad, even a hockey rink. It looked like the kind of place where everything worked the way it should. I should have known better. At first, I kept to myself. I worked from home, paid my dues, waved at neighbors. Everything seemed normal, until I started noticing things that didn't add up. The landscaping budget doubled one year. Then the pool deck that had just been refinished was repaired again for thousands more. Meanwhile, streetlights went out and stayed out for weeks. When I brought it up at the annual meeting, Alan, the HOA president, gave me that fake smile and said, "We've got it handled, Evan. Let's move on." That's when I knew something was off. So I did what most people would do. I asked questions online. Nothing aggressive, just facts. A couple of posts on the neighborhood page about how the HOA budget didn't make sense and how no one ever saw invoices for the projects that ate up our dues. 3 days later, I got an email from the HOA's management company. Cease and desist. They claimed I was spreading misinformation that could harm the community's reputation. It sounded ridiculous. I laughed it off. But then another letter showed up, this time from an attorney. Thick envelope, official seal, bold print across the top. Notice of defamation. I stood in my kitchen reading it 3 times, not sure if I was misunderstanding something. They were threatening to sue me for asking questions. I called the number at the bottom of the letter and got some smug paralegal who said, "You'll need to direct any responses through your attorney, Mr. Brooks." I didn't even have an attorney. The next HOA meeting was chaos. People whispered as I walked in. Alan sat at the front table in his usual posture, arms crossed, glasses halfway down his nose. When I brought up the letter, he said, "We can't have homeowners damaging the reputation of this community. Everything you've posted is being reviewed." Reviewed for what? I asked. "I posted the budget numbers you released." He leaned back. "You've taken things out of context." There was that phrase again. Always out of context. When I pressed him for clarity, he slammed the folder shut. "If you want to make this formal, then we'll handle it formally." I didn't even realize he meant court. 2 weeks later, a sheriff knocked on my door and handed me a stack of papers. My name was printed right under the words plaintiff, Fallstone Homeowners Association versus defendant, Evan Brooks. My stomach dropped. They were actually suing me. I called around and found a lawyer named Lisa who handled homeowner disputes. She looked through the documents and frowned. "They're serious," she said. "This isn't about defamation. This is about shutting you up." Lisa explained that HOAs sometimes file lawsuits like this to scare people into silence. They've got money, they've got connections, and they're counting on you giving up. I told her I wasn't backing down. The next few weeks were a blur. I started getting stares whenever I walked my dog. Some neighbors stopped saying hello. Others sent quiet messages of support but refused to go on record. It was like everyone was afraid to be seen near me. Then the HOA newsletter came out. It had a whole paragraph about false statements circulating online, reminding residents to trust only official communication. No names mentioned, but everyone knew who it was about. I tried to focus on work, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every knock on the door made my heart jump. Lisa kept telling me to stay calm. "They want a reaction," she said. "That's how they win." But calm wasn't easy when the people living 50 feet away were trying to ruin your life. A few nights later, I caught 2 board members standing near the end of my driveway, whispering. When I stepped outside, they walked off fast, pretending to check their phones. One of them, Tom, used to wave at me every morning. He didn't even look up. That night, I sat in my living room with the lawsuit papers spread across the coffee table. Pages and pages accusing me of reckless communication and malicious intent. I read every word. None of it made sense. They twisted normal conversations into accusations. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. "Just got the case scheduled. They want a full trial. 3.5 years. That's how long this would drag out if they got their way." I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. They thought they could wear me down. They thought I'd give in and apologize just to make it stop. But I wasn't going to do that. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. I walked outside and looked at the quiet row of perfect houses, every light evenly spaced, every lawn trimmed to regulation. The same neighborhood that was supposed to be the best of the best. I knew, standing there under those streetlights, that I was about to find out how far this HOA would go to keep control. And something told me I hadn't seen anything yet. The first court date hit me like a punch. I walked into the building and saw the HOA's lawyer, a slick woman with sharp heels and a sharper smile. Alan sat behind her, looking calm, almost smug. I felt my stomach twist. Lisa had warned me. "They'll try to scare you," she said. "They'll throw everything at the wall to see what sticks." And they did. They pulled up neighborhood emails, meeting minutes, even screenshots from my social media. Every word I had ever written about the HOA was dissected. "See, Your Honor," the lawyer said, "this man has consistently tried to damage the community's reputation." Lisa stood her ground. He asked questions about the budget. He cited invoices and contracts. "There is no defamation." Alan didn't flinch. He looked like he owned the room. The hearings went on for weeks. Every time I thought we had a win, the HOA came back with another document, another witness, another attempt to paint me as unstable. A few residents were called to testify against me. Some refused, others gave vague statements, clearly coached. I hated every minute. Neighbors stopped waving. I got emails from people warning me not to push too hard, saying I was upsetting the community. But a few sent messages secretly thanking me. Then Lisa found something that made my stomach turn and my heart race. Hidden emails between board members. They were mocking me, laughing about how I'd be taken down. They discussed a plan to discredit me before filing the lawsuit. Every sentence was deliberate, every lie planned. We took the emails to the judge. Lisa read them aloud in court. Alan's face drained of color. I could see the first crack in his armor. The courtroom went quiet. The judge leaned back and said nothing. I could feel the weight of the moment. For the first time, I sensed a shift. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The board doubled down after that. They started circulating partial, misleading information in the HOA newsletter. One article suggested I hated the community and its values. It made my skin crawl. Every time I walked to the mailbox, I imagined eyes following me. Every note on my door felt threatening. Every phone call from Lisa reminded me that the HOA could appeal, stall, or try to bankrupt me before I even got close to winning. And they were good at it. One afternoon, I got a message from Mark, a neighbor who used to be friendly. "They're asking me questions about you," he said. I didn't answer much. Mark was getting fines for speaking to me. That was their tactic. Isolate me, scare others, make it impossible to find support. Lisa kept me focused. "Document everything," she said. "Emails, letters, texts. We'll need it all to show their intent." I spent nights scanning pages, copying messages, making sure every interaction was recorded. I watched Alan on social media, seeing him post smiling pictures at community events while trying to destroy me in court. Then came the day Lisa dropped the real bomb. She had uncovered even more emails, older ones, where Alan and other board members admitted they were using community money to fund this lawsuit. They joked about sending a message and making an example. My heart pounded. This was it. This was what could turn the case completely. We scheduled a hearing. The courtroom was tense. Alan and his lawyer looked ready to argue every point. But when Lisa laid out the evidence, the emails, and the financial records, the judge stopped them. The board members tried to protest. Alan opened his mouth, but no one listened. By the end of the day, I walked out exhausted but feeling a glimmer of hope. The fight was far from over, but the tide had shifted. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Lisa. "They're regrouping. They'll try something else next week. Be ready." I looked at the dark street in front of my house that night, the quiet lawns all around me. The perfect neighborhood. I realized the board would do anything to win. Anything. And I knew the next move could be the one that either broke them or broke me. Word of the courtroom emails spread fast, even faster than I expected. Half the community knew by the end of the week that Alan and the board had been caught scheming, but that didn't stop the other half from pretending nothing happened. At the next HOA meeting, the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. People whispered as I walked in. Some tried to avoid eye contact. Others shot looks of anger or fear. A few, rare faces, offered silent nods of encouragement. Alan didn't look fazed, at least on the surface. He sat at the front table, glasses perched on his nose, a stack of papers in front of him like armor. The rest of the board shuffled nervously beside him. You could tell the cracks were forming, even if Alan didn't want anyone to see. I stayed in the back, listening as people tried to speak. One woman, Dana, stood up with a folder of receipts she'd collected from past meetings. "Why are our dues being wasted on lawsuits?" she demanded. "This is money from homeowners, and you're using it to intimidate a neighbor?" Alan's face hardened. "We're handling matters professionally. We're protecting the community." "That's not protection," Dana shot back. "That's bullying." And, you know it, a murmur ran through the room. Other residents started whispering, asking questions. For the first time, I could see people doubting the board. Some members tried to quiet the crowd, but it was like trying to hold back a rising tide. After the meeting, I walked outside, hoping the night air would calm me. But it didn't. Someone had left a note on my door again. The handwriting was messy. "You should have stayed quiet," it said. No signature, no explanation, just the threat. Lisa had warned me to expect it. "They'll try everything," she said. "Emails, rumors, even harassment. Don't let it get to you." It got to me anyway. Over the next few weeks, the community began to split. Some residents avoided me entirely. Others started contacting me privately with stories of their own experiences, fines for minor infractions, selective rule enforcement, even threats for speaking up. Everyone had a story, and for once, it wasn't just me. Then the board made another move. They announced a special assessment to cover unexpected legal expenses. Alan stood in front of the pool clubhouse, smiling as he explained the charges. The pool deck, the walking trails, the splash pad, all suddenly needed more money because of me, according to him. I overheard a couple of neighbors muttering, "They're lying. They just want to scare him into leaving." Exactly. A day later, someone drove by my house slowly, stopping to look at the windows. I saw the headlights flick across the living room. I slammed the blinds and called Lisa. She told me to document everything. Every note, every suspicious car, every message. She said it would help prove intimidation if we needed it. Then came the rumor campaign. Parts of the HOA newsletter were leaked. Statements about me disrupting harmony and attacking community values circulated. People were talking behind my back. Some blamed me for rising dues. Others feared standing up for me because they didn't want fines or harassment. Even Mark, the neighbor who had been friendly at first, sent a quiet message. "I don't want to get involved publicly." They're watching me too. I understood. The board's tactics were working. Isolation, fear, rumors. But it only made me angrier. Then came the evening that changed everything. I was walking back from the mailbox when I saw Tom and another board member whispering near the corner of the street. I froze. They looked at me, then one waved as if nothing was wrong. I didn't trust it. Inside my house, I spread the emails across the table again. The evidence of intent, the plotting, the lies. I reread every line. Alan had underestimated what documenting everything would do. He had no idea this could turn against him. Late that night, Lisa called with news that shook me. "They'd filed an appeal," she said. "They're trying to delay the final ruling. Expect more stalling, more attempts to intimidate you. Don't be surprised if they escalate." I stared at the ceiling for a long time. More stalling meant more fear, more harassment, more uncertainty. But it also meant their desperation was growing. The board couldn't hide forever, not with what we had. I thought about the people in my neighborhood, the ones who had cheered for Alan behind closed doors, the ones who had whispered threats, the ones who quietly supported me. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a mirror showing the cracks in the board's power. And I knew one thing. The next move wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the board. I just didn't know how ugly it would get. The final hearing arrived, and I could feel the weight of every year pressing down on me. 3.5 years of court dates, harassment, sleepless nights, and constant fear came to this moment. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, residents, lawyers, and a handful of people I didn't even recognize crowded the benches. Everyone seemed to want to see how this story would end. Alan sat at the defense table, stiff-backed and pale. His usual smugness was gone. Beside him, the remaining board members shuffled papers nervously. They looked smaller, less confident, like they had been forced to live a nightmare they couldn't control. I studied them quietly from my seat, feeling a mix of exhaustion and determination. Lisa was calm, as always. She reviewed her notes one last time before we began. "Stay focused," she said. "We have them on everything." The courtroom doors closed, the judge entered, and the hearing began. Lisa opened with a clear, sharp explanation of our case. She laid out the timeline of events, showing how every claim the HOA made was either fabricated, exaggerated, or manipulated to intimidate me. Every email, every hidden message, every documented lie was presented. Alan's lawyer tried to interrupt, trying to cast doubt, to suggest I had an agenda. But Lisa countered, piece by piece, showing the evidence of bad faith and deliberate harassment. The emails were the centerpiece. Board members laughing at the idea of destroying me, using community funds to fund the lawsuit, discussing who to target next. The judge read each one carefully, flipping pages slowly, scanning the digital printouts, nodding occasionally. Alan's face twitched. He whispered to a board member, his voice low but sharp. They argued quietly. I could see the fear growing. Their confidence had been hollow all along. Then came the witnesses. I watched as one by one, residents who had originally been coached to support the board came forward. Some admitted to being pressured. Some admitted they hadn't seen the full picture before. One neighbor, Dana, spoke up boldly. "I saw the emails. I didn't know what to do. But the board lied to all of us. We were manipulated." Murmurs filled the room. Alan slammed his hand on the table. "This is irrelevant," he shouted, but the judge silenced him. Lisa saved the final piece for last. She presented the financial evidence showing how the HOA's money had been misused, including invoices that didn't exist and funds redirected to pay for this harassment. The evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't just about the lawsuit. They had been abusing their power for years. The courtroom went silent. Every board member looked pale. Alan's jaw was tight. He had been so confident for so long, and now everything was collapsing around him. Hours later, the judge returned with the verdict. The courtroom was tense, everyone holding their breath. I could feel my heart pounding so loud it might have been heard across the room. The judge spoke slowly, clearly. The HOA's defamation claim was dismissed with prejudice. They could never refile. The board's actions were found to be malicious and intended to intimidate a resident. Furthermore, the HOA was ordered to pay my full legal fees. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to chaos. Residents looked at each other in disbelief. Some cheered quietly, others stared at the floor. Alan's hands shook slightly as he adjusted his papers. The other board members were frozen, unable to speak. Outside the courtroom, I was swarmed by reporters. Questions flew. Are you safe now? What happens to the HOA? Do you plan to go after the board? I answered carefully, knowing this moment would reach far beyond our little community. That night, the neighborhood felt different. There was tension, yes, but also a crack in the aura of perfection the board had tried to maintain. Some neighbors avoided me, unsure how to react. Others came forward privately, offering congratulations or sharing stories of their own experiences with the board's bullying tactics. Then, a call came from Lisa. They're panicking, she said. Alan and the rest are scrambling to cover themselves. Expect them to try one last stunt, but legally, they've got no room to maneuver. Within days, the effects were visible. Residents demanded emergency meetings. The board tried to maintain a facade, but the community had seen the truth. Papers detailing the misuse of funds, the emails, and the court documents circulated online. Even local journalists picked up the story. Alan and the board started receiving calls, emails, and threats of lawsuits from residents demanding accountability. The veneer of their so-called perfect community began to crumble. Every move they made now looked desperate, every statement questioned. I watched it all unfold, feeling exhausted but oddly detached. Years of harassment and sleepless nights had brought me to this point, but the fight was still alive. The board had underestimated what public exposure could do. Late one night, I received an email from a national journalist covering HOA corruption. They wanted interviews, documents, the whole story. I realized then that the courtroom victory was just the beginning. This story would not stay quiet. As I closed my laptop, I looked out at the quiet streets, the lights of the community center glowing dimly in the distance. The board had lost control. Their power was gone, their reputation destroyed. But one thought lingered, heavy and sharp. They might have lost in court, but they had already shown how far they were willing to go. And I knew that the next wave, the public exposure, would be even more devastating for them. Alan and the board could feel it coming. I could see it in the emails that leaked, the whispers in the neighborhood, the growing anger from residents. Their days of intimidation were over, but the fallout was just starting. I sat back in my chair and breathed. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about seeing the full collapse of the people who tried to ruin my life. And it was coming faster than anyone could have imagined. The aftermath hit like a storm. The moment the verdict was public, the neighborhood changed overnight. Alan and the rest of the board could no longer hide. The emails, the court documents, and the financial evidence spread like wildfire. Residents printed them, shared them in local forums, and passed them along to journalists. Suddenly, everyone knew exactly what had been going on. Emergency meetings were called. The community center that once hosted yoga classes and board-approved social events became a battlefield. People shouted, demanding accountability. They didn't just want answers, they wanted consequences. Alan tried to speak. He stood at the podium, throat tight, voice shaking. "We've served this community for years," he said. "We've acted with integrity." Laughter cut through the room like a whip. One man shouted, "Integrity? You stole from us and tried to ruin a neighbor's life." Alan went red. His hands gripped the podium so hard the wood creaked. The rest of the board members shuffled behind him, avoiding eye contact. One of them, Karen, whispered something to Alan, and he snapped, "Quiet." But nobody listened. One by one, residents demanded resignations. The first to cave was Tom, who quietly handed in his papers while muttering, "I can't deal with this anymore." Others followed, resigning mid-meeting, their faces pale and broken. Alan tried to resist. He stood there, defiant, shaking his head, but the crowd wouldn't relent. "You're done," Dana yelled. "All of you, step down now." By the end of the night, every single board member had been forced to resign. Their power, the years of control, the veneer of perfection, they were gone in hours. The room smelled of anger and satisfaction, a tension so thick it made the walls vibrate. Then came the lawsuits. Residents, armed with copies of court documents and emails, began filing their own claims. Misuse of dues, harassment, intimidation, selective enforcement of rules. Alan and the remaining board members were facing lawsuits from every angle. Vendors who had been stiffed or misled came forward with their own claims. The ripple effect was brutal. Alan's office phone rang constantly. He ignored it. Emails piled up. One day, a sheriff showed up with papers demanding a financial accounting, and Alan's composure cracked. He slammed the door to his home office and didn't answer anyone for days. The community that had once whispered about me behind closed doors now whispered about the board. Alan and his colleagues were no longer leaders. They were the cautionary tale, the headline story, the residents' target of scorn. I didn't gloat. There was no joy in it. Watching them squirm, seeing the fear on their faces, it was satisfying in a raw, grim way, but it wasn't victory in the way people expect. The neighborhood would take years to recover. Property values dropped. Residents were angry and exhausted. The perfect community facade was gone. Still, I had a voice now. I posted the documents, the emails, the timeline of the harassment. Social media lit up. Homeowner groups picked up the story. Local and state journalists reached out. The story went national. Every post, every article, every screenshot hammered the board further. Alan disappeared from public life. Karen moved away quietly. Others stayed but were paralyzed, afraid of what would come next. Lawsuits, angry neighbors, public exposure. They couldn't undo the damage. They had spent years trying to crush me, and it had all come back to crush them. Even now, months later, residents call me privately, thanking me for exposing the truth. The neighborhood is fractured. The board is gone. Their names are mud, and the public knows it. I sit at my computer late at night, scrolling through the posts, the emails, the news coverage. The HOA that tried to ruin my life is gone. The people who led it? Broken, facing lawsuits, resignations, public humiliation. The system they built to protect themselves collapsed under the weight of their own corruption. I lean back and exhale, feeling the tension in my shoulders finally loosen. The fight was brutal. It drained me. It scared me. But in the end, the board that thought they were untouchable was completely dismissed, forced to resign, and left to face the consequences of everything they did. There's no celebration, no feeling of triumph, just the raw reality of truth finally catching up to the people who tried to destroy me. The quiet streets, the empty board offices, the resigned faces of those who once ruled this community. It's all a stark reminder of what happens when power is abused and accountability finally arrives. The neighborhood would never forget, and neither would I.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.